Hey, John.
Hey, Nathan.
What are you working on?
Oh, hashtag Lent is here, hashtag purple, hashtag season change.
Ash Wednesday's here. Hashtag Ash Wednesday, hashtag burnt palms, hashtag Black Cross, hashtag forgot to wash, hashtag bedtime, hashtag dirty pillowcase.
Oh, I get it. Hashtag 40 days, hashtag Sundays don't count, hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag Lent is a word.
Hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag yes, hashtag give it up, give it up.
Give it up, hashtag give up coffee, hashtag give up chocolate, hashtag give up sweets.
Hashtag give it up TV, hashtag give up internet, hashtag give up Facebook, hashtag give up gossip, hashtag beep, 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 beep.
Hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag almsgiving, hashtag it means giving to the poor, hashtag give generously.
Yes, hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag prayer, hashtag fold your hands, hashtag close your eyes, hashtag talk to God, hashtag listen to God, hashtag prayer.
Hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag fasting, hashtag no food, hashtag so hungry, hashtag so worth it.
Hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag you can do anything for 40 days.
Hashtag can't hold your breath.
Hashtag good point, but hashtag Lenten practices, hashtag do what you can.
Tree of life, an awesome mystery, in our death we are reborn. Hashtag Marty Haugen, hashtag ELW 334, hashtag Lenten section of the ELW.
Hashtag Lent is here, hashtag almsgiving, hashtag prayer,